So what exactly is going to be the most important or beneficial for players? Is it investing in your Descendants or is it investing in your guns? And I see a lot of players getting rubber banded into trying to build so many units or not actually investing enough in their guns. And I want to emphasize a couple of different things. So I wanted to start off first here with the Research Institute. The Research Institute, we obviously know we can craft the two most important resources, which is the crystallization catalyst and the energy activator. Now, I want to actually identify, because we haven't done this in any video, what is the most important out of the two. Now, if we take a look real quick, the energy activator, again, takes about a day and 6 hours, which is 30 hours to craft, right? But then when you go and you look at the crystallization catalyst, it takes 7.5 hours, which means you can roughly make almost about 4 crystallization catalysts to the ratio of how many energy activators that you can make. And keep in mind, energy activators are used for capacity, which you only use once per thing, whether it be Descendant or gun. And then you have the crystallization catalyst, which is for module socketing, which can be utilized anywhere from 8 to 10 times, depending on if it's a regular to an ultimate Descendant. Now, that is the game itself screaming and telling you what is more important, right? So now that we have that visual, character to gun, the variations in importance and what exactly is going to help you the most. Now, the thing is that I would say for the character is going to be primarily in the beginning, okay, is going to be primarily about survivability, okay? That is the most important thing. So when we're looking at, say, for example, my Ajax doesn't really take nearly as much to get him to do certain things. When we're looking at certain values that I'm just like, I leave him on them just cause so I seen a lot of you guys were like mentioning like the antibody and stuff like that. I did that super early in the game. So yeah, that's like completely irrelevant at this point. It's not really like an insane thing. But yeah, I did that super early in the game and I just left it on him because the main values that he needs is just HP defense. You can stack the spear and shield for HP and defense with the battle of stamina, and then get, skill duration and skill power. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You really just need the defense and HP. Like that's all he really needs, right? Because the shield scales off of that. The HP makes him tanky. The defense makes him tanky. So he just survives, right? And you could even say for most other units just to get them through the content, yes, you can emphasize HP stacking, defense stacking, and things of that nature. It's very, very simple. But when you start trying to now talk about specialty building, stacking and building into HP and defense values isn't necessarily going to be the answer, depending on who you're using. If you're using someone like Bunny, you'll typically notice that most bunnies are very squishy. They're very, very squishy. And they typically will only build into one stat. They're not full send building into HP and defense. They're going to still be building into the skill that Bunny does because there's so much damage that she can basically emit from her body that it's more beneficial to do that. So that's where you start to have variations and changes in builds, right? So for example, let's take my Blair, for example, right? I'm now doing a specialty build with him where I'm going to start building him to cater into building his kit up, right? And just skyrocketing his DPS potential. Now, the thing is that the Truly Deadly Cuisine is not exactly the Transcendence that I want. I was testing it out, but there's another mod, and I have that in my Blair build video. So if you're really hyped for that, make sure you subscribe. But we're going to have that coming. But as you can see here, I'm not full sending into HP on top of HP. I have a increased HP, right? Because I do need some value so I don't die. So he has about like 9,000 HP right now. And then we have the defense with the skill power. These is, again, it's not as high as the base skill or defense, but the base defense only is giving me defense, whereas like I'm looking at, okay, I can get some additional skill power on top of this. And then the other thing, skill cooldown. I have dimension power. I have enlightenment for more MP, fire skill power, skill critical hit rate, skill concentration. These are all things that are going to allow my abilities to do more damage, but then also in conjunction, it's also going to allow me to work into getting to the build I want that's going to directly affect my guns. So when you're talking about like I mentioned before, graduating, you are going to start having some slight variations and pieces that you're going to start stacking. So there's even like another thing, right? Like even another, I'll show you guys another mod that I want to actually put on. And let me see if I can actually find it. Let's see. So, I have it socketed. So let's see now if we can actually search it. So another one I have that I actually want to put on is the front line. So this is kind of like my icing on the cake to kind of further emphasize the crit rate, crit damage that I'm actually going for my skill. And so that is something I already started to level. And so that will end up more than likely finding a slot on here. So you have to kind of determine, like, based off of your unit. Again, I would argue as you're playing the game, you're gonna have to progressively learn mechanics, get better at dodging, and of course, leading into the next thing, increasing your DPS. Now, the thing is that when we're talking about increasing your DPS, what is the important factor about this? The DPS is the killing factor, right? Like, that's how you're going to get through bosses. And I feel like one of the biggest bottlenecks that a lot of players have when we're talking about trying to increase their DPS is that they are emphasizing stats that aren't as valuable until you do have it at that point of being maxed, which will require you to be able to, you would have to module socket more, right? So when you're looking at, for example, like something like firearm attack, we've already talked about how important that is, right? But there's going to be other mods that are still going to have value, even if you just have them at a 3 or a 4. You don't have to take up every mod right away. Like, I see some people doing that, and then they hit capacity, and then it's like, well, you could have actually split that, you know, say it was like some investment in the crit and then also weak point damage, and you would have gotten a little bit more value, right? So it's nothing wrong with doing that. Like, even just equipping like something like this is still giving me an additional 5% crit rate and firearm crit rate and firearm crit damage, which again, even at 5% is still beneficial, right? And as I level that, it's only going to become more valuable. So when you're talking about building your guns and getting more DPS on your guns, this is ultimately going to be the biggest determining factor in you being able to contribute and kill a boss. Because if you're not dealing enough damage, you're not going to be able to survive one, or I should say, really, it's not even a matter of surviving, but it's just battling against the timers that exist in things such as the void intercepts. Again, different variations in what you are building, whether you're building like a bunny versus like a glay versus a ajax, is going to change what you might want to further emphasize. But I think on a general note, guns are going to be the most important thing, because guns are actually the thing that is just going to be a constant raise in damage that you do. Whereas when you're looking at your character, the main thing that you're primarily worried about, at least in the beginning, is survivability. You're not worried so much about the specialty build. Like, once you get more into, and I think that that's one thing the game has to do a better job at, like trying to clarify or like, you know, kind of tell people, is that when you first get into hard, that doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't mean you're at full send end game, only because of the fact that you still need to be at a point DPS wise to be able to actually start farming things like the void intercepts, which, if you don't know, you get special I would say gear sets when you get or bonus effects when you're farming the external components from the void intercept hard bosses. So that's a huge difference in comparison to, you know, just having a really tanky unit and they're not a tank, right? So it just kind of all depends on what you value. But I would say, on a general note, your guns are going to be way more valuable to you and getting you into that next piece of content. Again, if we look at another gun, right, and I'll even touch on like duping a weapon. I would say the reason why farming dupes is not a bad thing is because you could still be farming the crystallization blueprints if you aren't getting the drop for the gun itself. Like, you just have to check out and take a look. I always say check the amorphous, the crystallization catalyst blueprint. So try to match up, like, whatever you're farming, try to make sure that the crystallization catalyst blueprint is also a potential drop. You know, of course, you're going to have some with energy activators, which is perfectly okay. But this is definitely going to be the way to go. I think, again, a lot of players are still like, you know, I'm going to full send my character versus I'm going to full send a weapon. You know, you're going to get more value out of pushing your weapons a little bit more, just because the baselines and the things that you're able to get for survivability aren't that hard to get. But when you then start talking about specialty builds, that's when these things start to kind of tweak and change quite a bit. But outside of that, guys, that's going to be that for this video. We're going to have a ton more coming. But again, let me know what you guys have going on. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. I'm trying to answer as many as I possibly can. But if you want to join the Discord as well, we have tons of people in there that are willing to help you with your build, and they're progressing maybe the same, if not further. So definitely join in. But that's going to be that, guys. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.